first and foremost is we have two separate draw functions here, right? Draw and draw rectangle. Now, me personally, I have been an estimator. I've been an estimating manager. I've trained many people in this program and really encourage folks to use the draw rectangle tool. And let me tell you why. Draw is great if you are drawing point to point. But point to point can be a little bit messy, right? You can get a 91-degree angle, you can get an 89-degree corner. Um, it's just a lot of variance. If we use draw and click and hold, we are ensuring 90-degree angles. Same thing with draw rectangle, uh, with the added benefit that if you accidentally click, it doesn't automatically start drawing a single line. You will still get a box. Does that make sense to everyone? Can you give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Thumbs down if it doesn't? Great. Thanks so much. So I like to use the draw rectangle. I'm going to zoom in nice and tight. I know new users especially don't like zooming in. I feel like they think that it doesn't lend itself to drawing because I'm only getting a fraction of my floor plan. But the reason why you like to zoom in like this to draw is because of the level of precision. The more zoomed in you are, the better precision you have. Does that make sense? So I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to start dragging. While holding down that left mouse button, I'm using my middle finger to scroll out using my scroll wheel, and then I'm going to simply press down on the scroll wheel, still holding that left mouse button, to pan over. Then I can zoom out a little bit further, and then I can find that opposite right-hand side corner. Now, once I get to that opposite corner, notice I'm using my crosshairs to get those red crosshair lines in the middle of the black line that the architect has provided me. I'm going to release. Then as I zoom out, you can see that I've covered both fingerprint exam and exam completely with one single room. Make sense so far? Awesome. So then we have this little bit of a casework area. And so I can do one of two things. One is I can split the wall section and shove this down, right? Or what I could do is I can just draw using the same exact tool another small area. Now, me personally, I like to work procedurally, meaning I like to get into a tool and stay in that tool while I'm working through an entire floor plan. So that way I can get everything in that tool done and then move on to the next thing, right? Working very methodically. This ensures that I don't miss anything, thinking transitions, manipulating room sizes, all of that sort of stuff. Now, with these two rooms drawn, I can select both of them, right click in the room, navigate down to room edit, and then I can merge these two rooms. Now I have the perfect shape for these two rooms. But notice here I have a 1'6" wall segment, and then I have an 11'8" wall segment. The reason we would not leave this in the current configuration is because if we applied base, the system would think that this 1'6" needed to trim that wall base. When we know, right, as practical users, that from this corner to this corner would be one piece of wall base, right? So to clean this up, I'm going to right click within the selected room, navigate down to room edit, and then over to delete wall segment. This is going to give me a little X on my mouse. Now, this tool requires a little bit of nuance. The system thinks and works clockwise. So when you are thinking clockwise, to get rid of this wall segment, to merge it into this wall segment, I have to select one of them to get rid of, right? So if I'm working clockwise, I'm going to start at the bottom. And then when I select it, notice it gets rid of that and merges those two walls into one. Does that make sense to anybody? Thumbs up if it makes sense, thumbs down if it doesn't. Great. Right click to end the tool. Next, we need to add this sort of chicaned wall into the mullion. So we are going to use a draw wall function. So right click within the room, room edit, draw wall. Now I'm going to zoom in nice and tight. Using the crosshairs, I'm going to find the middle of that dark gray line that the architect has provided us. I'm going to click and hold. Now wait a second. Notice that there is a red line and there's black lines. The red line is my drawing line and the black lines are my wall, okay? Notice at the bottom of my screen, we have some things blinking at us. So it says press S to switch the wall position to the drawing line. So notice currently my drawing line is centered. I don't prefer to draw that way because I don't want to have to guess where the wall is going to land, like where is the center. So if I press S, it's going to shift the wall to one side. Now this doesn't line up with where I need it to be, so I'm going to press S again. Now notice I can't really see the wall because it's in such perfect alignment. Perfect. So I'm going to zoom out, press down on my scroll wheel to pan, navigate all the way up into my corner. I'm going to zoom in to get that horizontal alignment, click, drag, find the vertical alignment, click, and then connect it to my horizontal line at the top. I cannot speak today. I apologize. When you are connecting this wall to an existing wall, it will illuminate the existing wall green. And since I'm closing out the shape, it is giving me that blue line to let me know that it will split these two rooms apart. Okay, with me so far? Next, we have a little bit of a column and a thicker wall here on the exterior. So I need to clean that up. Again, I can attack this a few different ways, but coming from the estimating world, I solidly live in the ain't nobody got time for that world. So what I like to do is I like to use the insert hole tool. Does anybody else use insert hole to clean up their rib shapes? That's the fastest way to get there. So again, right click within the room, room edit, insert hole. Now I am going to grab the innermost corner, right where the corner reaches into the room the most. Zoom out once I get that perfect alignment, click, hold, drag outside of the room. Once I get there, I can release and you'll see it trimmed it. Same thing here. I'm going to find the corner that reaches into the room the most, click and hold, drag outside, release, and now I'm done. That's the fastest way I can get you to modifying the room. Okay, click and hold. Next, I want to capture these two exam rooms. We are going to use the same methodology that we used previously with our draw rectangle. I'm going to start in the bottom left-hand corner, click and hold, zoom out ever so much, and then pan. And I'm going to make it all the way up to the alignment with my adjacent room. Once I found that, I can release, right click to end the tool. Now you can see that I have a little bit of a jog where the column starts and then the wall goes up. So I'm going to use my insert hole. I'm going to find the corner that reaches into the space the most, click and hold, start dragging, zoom out, and reach all the way up to the top, release. Now I'm done. So the only thing left is to split these two rooms apart, but I'm going to use a different methodology so that way you guys have another tool in your tool bag. Okay, sound good? So I'm going to grab my divider tool this time. I'm going to zoom in fairly tight and I'm going to try and find the exact middle of my wall. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag to the opposite side. Notice how I'm using the alignment of the crosshairs with that black dashed, right? So if I'm slightly off, it's a blue dashed, but if I'm perfectly horizontal, it's a blue and black dashed. So using that alignment, I'm going to connect it to the opposite side, right click to end the tool, and you'll see that I now have a divider line. But I need these two to be separated. So I'm going to right click within the selected room. I'm going to navigate back to room edit and I'm going to use split room. This will make two completely separate rooms. Okay. So the reason why I'm showing you several different methodologies to get the same exact job done is under the thought or the premise that not everyone thinks the same way. So if I provide you with several different ways to get there, one of the ways will make sense to your brain. So if I can provide you with the way that makes the most sense, then by all means, I intend to give that to you. Last but not least, let's grab this storage room, the two exam rooms, the reception, the waiting room, and the break room. I'm going to draw these in fairly quick succession. So if you guys have a question while I'm going through this, feel free to stop me, ask a question in the Q&A section, and the moderators will get to you. I'm going to click and hold, get it all the way into where it meets the column there. I'm going to draw both of these rooms as one. Awesome. Last one. Oops. Don't right click. Great. Now, as some of you can see, I've overlapped on a column, the reception and the waiting room overlap, and I actually need to bring this guy down because the waiting room needs to overlap the break room. So I'm going to use another tool. Notice I drew it all in boxes. I'm going to use another tool to clean all of these up, okay? So I want to keep the space of the waiting room and modify the break room. To do this, right? First things first is the reception extends over into the waiting room. So if we want to keep the reception the way it is, I need to select reception. I'm going to right click on the reception. I'm going to go to room edit and I'm going to choose punch out. Now the waiting room is modified to allow for the reception. Then I grab the waiting room, right click on the waiting room, room edit, choose punch out, and now it's modified the break room. So when you are working with punch out, the thought process is to select the space you want to keep and work procedurally through the punch out process. So I did this one first, and then I did this one, and then I did that one. So that way it's going to modify all three rooms. Last but not least, I want to capture this lab space, but I only want to have to draw two walls. Okay. I don't want to have to draw all this weird shape. I don't want to have draw it and merge it all together. That's too much like work. So I'm going to take my standard draw. I'm going to find the alignment with my adjacent space. I'm going to click. I'm going to take it all the way down into the corner, find the alignment, click, navigate over to the right-hand side, find the alignment, click. Now I can use auto takeoff, right? The autocomplete to draw out the rest of that space. To do that, all I need to do is right click to end the tool. And now I've drawn all of that space and all I did was draw two walls. Do you guys find some time value in that? Save you a little bit of time. Now the thought process with the autocomplete is you have to think of it like water, okay? There can only be one opening. And in order to get it to work correctly is you have to be plugging that one opening, okay? So again, we want to clean this up. We have two separate wall sections here. We need to clean that up. So I'm going to choose the delete wall segment, and I'm going to, again, working clockwise, I'm going to choose the shorter segment, the 4.3, and now I have one wall segment. I do still need to break the two exam room restrooms from one another. Looks like the architect did an oops, but they never do that, right? Architects never make oopsies. So I'm going to grab their draw wall, zoom in nice and tight, find the alignment with that thick black line, and draw my intermediary wall. Great. So now we have all of our rooms drawn. I'm going to go ahead and go into my visual options and turn off my dimensions just because it's a little too messy for me. I'm also going to turn off the room labels at this point because they're not providing any additional data. Okay. So what's next? Doors. Logically for me, it would be doors is next. So I'm going to go ahead and click my door tool. Notice the pop-up. My style is always going to be no leaf because as the flooring contractor, we're not building the building. We're not installing the doors. I don't want to have to worry about a door swing. I don't want to have to worry about a door slab. So by choosing no leaf, I'm getting all of the benefits of using the door tool with none of the headache. So I'm getting the where the system will build out my saddle, right? Bringing that product to the midline of the wall. I'm also going to have a line to apply a transition. I will be able to apply a linear product around that door frame in case we need to apply Schluter at a door frame. And should you run against the very rare instance where you need to tile out or apply product to the interior case of a cased opening, I can do that with a no leaf. So that being said, my system setting door style is always going to be no leaf. Notice I have a 3-foot wide, 7-foot tall standard commercial door. And the transition I'm going to leave blank at this point. Reason being is we have a lot of rooms that are the same product where no transition is required. And if I do apply a transition at this stage, it is too easy to get it wrong, where the door is being too applied, where the transition just doesn't make sense. So best practice is always to leave the transition off and apply those after the fact. So with that being said, I can go ahead and click OK. Notice I now have a door on my mouse, and then I can zoom in and literally go door to door. Isn't that funny? Door to door. Clicking every location where these doors exist. And again, this just sort of goes along with the working procedurally through your plan to make sure we are not forgetting anything. Alrighty. And then our back door. I'm gonna bump that over. Didn't realize my alignment was off. And then last but not least, we have an opening here. And you'll notice that I skipped it because it's not a 3-foot. So we can attack this in a myriad of ways. One is we can use a door, and I'll use my takeoff door to create this space. Or I could similarly use my split wall segment and then just delete the wall segment. Now, currently, MeasureSquare does not have a way to stop the finish at the edge of the wall section, right? It's always going to build it to the middle of the wall section. So if you need, like if you have a barn door where the finish changes at the wall face, you are going to have to click split wall segment and then delete wall segment. Make sense? Awesome. So for this one, the intent is to have this LVT change at the face of this wall. So I'm going to go ahead and click delete, or excuse me, split wall segment. And then I'm going to select that wall segment by clicking on the gray piece, pressing delete on my keyboard. And then I have to do the same thing from the opposite side. So I'm going to split wall segment here, right click to end the tool, select the wall segment by selecting the gray piece, then grabbing the handle from the carpet side and dragging it all the way out to where the two finishes meet. Does that make sense, everybody? Gotta fix these walls. They were slightly off. Perfect. Awesome. Great. Now, one more thing. If I view this in 3D, oh my goodness, moving too quickly. This reception doesn't look very welcoming, does it? It's like, thank you, come in, we want your money, leave, right? So let's make it a little bit more friendly, shall we? So I'm going to zoom in nice and tight. Oh, let's put my walls away. I'm going to drag this into position. And I'm going to use my split wall segment here at the corner because this part of the wall is going to be full height. However, this portion of the wall is going to be more like a knee wall because you can see the glass that is above. So to change the height of this wall, I'm going to open my right-hand side property view. Notice I have two options here. I have wall section wall height, and then I have room wall height. So I don't want to change the entire room. I just need to change this one area. So I'm going to use my wall section. I'm going to change that to 3 foot. Now I'm going to do this for all of the wall sections that are along this front edge of this reception. 3, enter. The system thinks in full feet, so it makes sense to just type 3, enter. I'm going to split this after the thickness of that wall. Select 3, enter. Now I have to do the same thing from the outside, because if I don't, these walls are full height, whereas these walls are short. Does that make sense to everybody? Wall sections should be thought of like drywall panels, right? You need one on either side of your wall in order to have a complete room. So selecting the outer room, I'm going to select the wall section, 3, enter. Nope, I did that one, so I must not have changed this one. There we go. And then this guy. So now if I grab these two rooms and I view them in 3D, we have a short, neat wall. Much more welcoming to the people coming into the suite, right? Awesome. So now if we view this entire space in 3D, it's looking a bit more like it should. So next thing is we have our finishes right here. Lucky for you guys, I already have them built out. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on applying these finishes, and then we'll go through setting up the patterns and everything else. Sound good? So I know one of the questions that we had for today was waste factors, and I'm going to work through that as we apply the finishes, okay? So first things first is our waiting room gets F1, B1, W1, and C1. That's fantastic, but what the heck does that mean? So F1 is carpet tile, and it's a J&J flooring, and color, or excuse me, the pattern is provision, and it gives me the style code. Color is called fitting. F2 is LVT. Again, it's a J&J. We probably can assume it's going to be a plank. And F3 is going to be a porcelain floor tile. So I did some pre-work and looked up these specs so I could get the sizes effectively entered. Okay. So this J&J is a 24 by 24 tile. So I put in here in my material description, J&J, this is the style code 1831 provision. It's a 24 by 24. Here is the color, and that I'm assuming is going in monolithically. Okay. What I did is I took one of the manufacturer's recommendations as far as how it should be laid and just applied it here because they did not provide me with an install method. Same thing here. So J&J, here's the classics 9 by 48. It's a 20 mil product with the micro bevel. I've given every piece and part of the specification here in the material description. So that way, when I hand this off to my project coordinator who does all of the ordering and requesting of pricing, they know specifically what to ask the pricing for. They don't have to ask if it's a square edge or a micro bevel. They don't have to guess on the size or the thickness. Okay. So this is best practice for your material descriptions. And then again, I'm just assuming the install method because nobody gave me any sort of direction on what it is. I've also broken out cove base over straight base just because, again, nobody has given me that information. And then I gave the floor tiles a 24 by 24. So obviously it can only go in a few different ways. And then we have a very specific tile pattern, which we will get to in just a moment. So I'm going to drag and drop, assuming we have a monolithic. And then we have F2 for all of our other spaces. So we have F1 in the reception, and we have F2. So If we simply drag and drop F2, it's going to take what I used last, which was an offset. But if we get any sort of product where we drag and drop, we're going to get a stack pattern. I do not recommend doing a stack pattern with a plank product because that's never going to be how it goes in. So you are effectively skewing your quantities by doing so, by just painting the floor with the product. Okay. So if I go into any of these finishes, you'll see that carpet tile is set at half reuse. My J&J is at cut and fit. My dowel tile is at half reuse. My wall tile is at half reuse. And my accent is no piecing together. So why do I have what I have? It's because I've already done this project one time and I understand what the output ends up looking like. So if I drag out this edge, you can see, let me move the waist over. You can see that by having half reuse in these areas, we get 5.8% waste. That's fairly realistic. But by doing cut and fit on my LVT, we're at 4.8%. If I change this from cut and fit to half reuse and I save it, now I'm at 13.5%. To me, that's too high. So if I change it to cut and fit, then it gets me back in the realm of reasonable. Does that make sense? So let me tell you and outline the logic behind the calculation methods. So start with waste add-on. Waste add-on is your net plus a forced amount of waste. It's a fake number. It's never going to be a real number. Half reuse means if I have this 9x48 and I cut it in half and it's now a 9x24, the system will attempt to reuse it. But if it becomes a 9x23 3/4, it's going to count it as waste. Okay, so it has to be half a tile or more in order to be reused. Cut and fit means I'm going to try and reuse everything down to our quote unquote ignore tiny size system setting. For carpet and resilient tile, I have my system setting at 4 inches. That's about as small as it can get in order to get it to stick and pressure sensitive glue. So my thought is 4 inches. So anything above 4 inches, 4.5 inches, 5 inches, the system will attempt to reuse it. No reuse is going to be the best used for very large ceramic panels. Think laminam, where you're going to get one cut and then the remaining piece is more than likely going to be chipped or broken and therefore rendered unusable. Okay, that's the logic behind all of these calculation methods. So half reuse is sort of like the sweet spot given the fact that we have to keep the site clean. We know we're going to have some freight damage. Not everything is going to be usable. Half reuse. And then if that results in exorbitant waste like it did with my LVT, then I would change it down to cut and fit. Does that make sense to everyone? Awesome. So given the fact that we have drawn everything and we need to set a pattern for this product, I'm going to right click and I'm going to design a pattern with it. If the intent is for us to grab a stagger pattern, I typically just use what the system provides and use it accordingly. The essential thought is that whatever's cut off on this end is reused on the first row of the next, right? Typical stagger. But if the intent maybe for this pattern is intended to be a 1/3 offset, then we can just change the fraction up here at the top to 1/3. I can duplicate this piece by using the papers. Now, you're not going to be able to grab a piece and move it. You have to actually grab the handle. Notice how my mouse changes when I hover over one of these handles. So if I click this edge, the bottom left corner of my right-hand side piece, move it to the top edge of the left piece and start sliding, you'll see it stops me at half. And if I keep going, then it'll stop me at 2/3. If I release, notice it gives me a repeatable pattern. However, the first option is most likely never going to be the correct one because it is a stack and then an offset and then a stack and then an offset. I have never effectively seen this used, so be aware that the second option, the right-hand side option, is going to be the one you are looking for, where it is a single offset every step of the way. Then what do we do? Great question. So we can either save this into our pattern library, which lives here under tile patterns, or what I recommend you do is save it to your project. So to do so, click Save to Project. It will open up the Save to Project window. And then I typically name it whatever the designator is. So in this case, it would be F2, and then how it is being laid. So that would be 1/3 offset. Let's get that spelled correctly. Thank you. And then once I click OK, notice I have an upside down A on my mouse. I can then click in all of the spaces where this product occurs and then right click to end. Make sense? Moving on. Let's add our F3. Now we're going to assume that the architect here gave us this hatching because they want us to align with the hatching given on the plan. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose pattern position. Notice I am not selected on any one room. Come on. Thank you. This allows me to flip from room to room, aligning as I go without worrying about messing up one single room. So since the hatching does not match the actual size of our product, we're just going to have to hope. Now, we want this product, this LVT product, to flow continuously, right? Because that's how the installers are going to install it. So I need to make sure that all of this flows. And currently, it's, as you can see with these dots here, is that this is kind of centered in each of the rooms. So to get it aligned, I can do one of two things. I can either click and hold down control and click all of these rooms, which again, ain't nobody got time for that. So I like to come over here, go away please. I like to come over here into my project items, right click on the item I'm looking for, and then select rooms applied. This will quickly and easily select all of the rooms where that finish is currently applied. It will allow me to then choose pattern position, illuminating all of those rooms. And then I can choose a central location or maybe a center of a doorway to align all of that product from one single point. Is that helpful for everyone? Moving on. We're going to do the same thing with the reception and the waiting room. Even though these rooms don't touch, people will be able to see over that knee wall. So we want to make sure that it's aligned accordingly. So again, we're going to select both rooms. We're going to pattern position, and then we can choose one location. So me personally, I sort of like to choose this, this long wall. Sometimes that's a really good place to start. That's not entirely great. Maybe we want to choose the middle of this wall. I don't like that either. Look at all the little sliver cuts. So maybe then I'll just choose a corner. That looks better, right? It looks like we have almost full cuts all the way across. And then we do have some little sliver cuts, but that's on the far end where people are less likely to see. It also gives us a full course of product off this reception desk and buries our cuts underneath the desk where, again, no one will see. Make sense? So what I love about choosing the rooms and choosing pattern position is it allows you to align and realign until you get that perfect alignment. No need to go back and reselect the rooms and re-choose the tool. You can just do it until your heart's content, truthfully. So let's work on that wall tile. So first things first is I'm going to navigate over to my elevations where you can see here's my walls. This is what it looks like. Here's our base. We have 2 courses and then a little course and then 2 courses and a little course and then 2 courses and a trim of some sort. So then if we navigate over to A7.3, look, now we have some very clear directions, right? So how the heck do I get this? Fantastic question. First is I have to apply the base. Okay. So I'm going to go back over to my option. I'm going to grab the base and I'm just going to apply it in the room like we would normal. Okay. So if I view this wall, look there, 6 inches base, right? And if I open up this product, you can see I've specified it is a 6 by 24, just like it says. So that way we're getting the correct number of pieces. Now we could, if we wanted to take that a step further, we could say, hey, I want you to sell it by the piece. Each piece is 2 feet long. And then that way we're getting a piece count at the end. Why does that matter? Because this is intended to be cut from our floor tile, right? So if I'm telling the system, hey, I need to sell this by each, and I'm only getting 2 linear feet per each, then it's going to give me a piece count on the output. Make sense? Awesome. Moving on. So then if I go back over to my detail, we have 2 courses of my 12 by 24, 1 course of the 1 by 6, 2 courses of 12 by 24, 1 course of 1 by 6, and 2 courses of 12 by 24 with a Schluter jolly at the top. So the easiest way to get this done, I'm just going to pick a wall, right click on the wall. I'm going to add a horizontal wall stack at where? 2 foot. Why 2 foot? Because if these pieces are 12 by 24, we know that each piece is 12 inches tall. And then the next piece is going to only be 1 inch, and then 2 feet, and then 1 inch. I have to zoom in really, really tight in order to get that. And then 2 feet. And then that should be it. And my Schluter jolly at my W2 should be at the top. Okay. So then I grab my W2, place it in all the locations that it needs to go, grab my accent, apply it accordingly, and voila, we have a wall stack. Now, this looks amazing, right? Until you zoom in and you're like, whoa, what is that? That's a tiny sliver. We don't like that. So we have to move that down. So then we have to move this guy down, right? To make sure. And then you're like, oh no, we have another sliver. So that's okay because we're going to pattern position using our crosshairs. And then we're going to zoom in and we're like, oh no, we have another sliver. No worries. We're going to grab it and we're going to slide it down. So now we're perfect everywhere, right? So then I don't want to have to rebuild that. That's too much like work. So I'm going to pattern assignment profile. I'm going to copy the wall, and then I'm going to click inside the room because again, fastest way possible, product assignment profile, and I'm going to paste the wall profile to all walls. Done. Same thing over here. I have one wall built, right click, product assignment profile, paste wall profile to all walls. Now we're done. The last thing I have to worry about is transitions. It's pretty quick, right? So we have a tile to resilient that's going to go at these 2 rooms. And we have a carpet to resilient, which is going to go at these 2 doors. And now we can effectively say we're done. I'm going to go into my visual options. I'm going to turn off my pattern position just because I don't like all of those little blue dots everywhere. I'm going to put my walls away and I'm going to add a legend. I'm going to make sure it has all of my products. I'm going to say okay. And I'm going to paste my legend on my plan. Now, I think it looks best down here. You be the judge. I like a full border because I like to give it some presence on the page. I also like to give it a white background, even though there's nothing behind it, just because I like to make sure, again, that it's nice and clear, jumps off the page. I'm going to dial up the text size a little bit. And voila, we have a completed takeoff. So if I were not explaining, right, this would probably have taken me 15, 20 minutes to do because I work procedurally. I have full confidence that anyone and everyone I train can fully handle it in that amount of time, given the tips and tricks that I provide. So I have somebody with their hand up. Can you go ahead and type your question for us? So I see that there was a question about punch out. So let me do that process one more time. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the products from this space. And I'm going to remove these 3 rooms. I'm going to go ahead and redraw those rooms just so that way they are the incorrect shapes. Awesome. So these 3 rooms are all overlapped, correct? So I have to work procedurally. If I select the waiting room and I choose punch out, right, which is also room edit, punch out, because I have the waiting room selected, it's going to modify the reception space and the break room. Okay. But if I choose the break room and I choose punch out, it's going to modify the waiting room. So when you are thinking about using punch out, you want to start from the room that needs to remain regardless, which would be the reception. Okay. So once I've selected the space I want to remain, I'm going to right click, room edit, punch out. Okay. That modified my waiting room. Then when I choose the waiting room and I choose punch out, it's not going to modify the reception space. Okay. So I'm going to right click, room edit, punch out, and then it modified the break room space. Does that help make it a little bit more clear, Lamar? Awesome. Any other questions? You want me to show how to do the legend again? I can absolutely do the legend again. Let me delete the legend. First things first is I'm going to find the legend button. Now I want to talk through some of the options here under the legends dropdown. Is by just choosing the legend, you are essentially pulling in the data from the number SKU line. Does that make sense to everyone? It's just the number SKU line. If I choose project product legends, that means even though I have this job as estimate by tab, it's going to give me all of the finishes for my entire project. Can you see how quickly that would be a little messy or significantly overwhelming for your viewer? So, but be aware that option exists. Next is going to be product usages. This is again broken out by how I have my estimate by, which is estimate by tab. So we are effectively giving our GC, our installer, whoever's looking at this plan, our quantities. Not exactly useful in most instances. And then lastly is project product usages. Again, this is all of the usage, meaning all of the quantity for the entire project for just the products that are here on this tab. Okay, those are the top options. Next, we have some additional options, which is tile shape. So maybe we have a triangular or a hex or a really fancy shaped tile, and you wanted to show that in your legend. You can absolutely do that by turning on effectively the tile shape in legend. Okay. Next is the add-on symbol in legend. It effectively gives you a little symbol that just says that, hey, this item has been added as an add-on. Next is the product size in the legend. Now, if you do not type in the size in your material description, this can be a helpful bit of information. And then the product unit. How are you estimating this, right? So again, notice how I have my F3 and it is estimated in square feet. So at the end of my product description, it would tack on a little SF. Okay. And then lastly is details in legend. Now, I want to again caution you with the usage of this option because details in legend is going to give just about everything. So again, if I open up this product, it will give you the number SKU, the descriptor, the manufacturer, the size, all of it. I mean, all of it. Unit, product size, everything that you've basically typed in, it's going to put that in the legend. So I recommend only using the legend. So if I click on that, it's going to pull up the data here. You can see I have a rectangle here. I have a little bitty plank there. And then I will place it, select the legend itself. Me personally, I like a full border with a white background. And then I'm going to just sort of bump that up to something bigger. Okay. How do you send this plan to a designer builder as part of my contract submission? I highly recommend printing it to a PDF and then attaching it to an email. So what I like to do is file, print. Thank you. Um, I like tabloid, me personally. I just think it's a nice size. Changing it to autofit. Now, if you need a scaled drawing, highly recommend choosing an architectural E-sized sheet and choosing diagram scale type by print scale to choose the actual scale that the native drawing has been in. And then under your select printer, choose MeasureSquare PDF printer. Why? It's not because we like our stuff. It's because MeasureSquare PDF printer is going to give you the crispest colors, the crispest black lines, just making sure that you're getting the best possible visual for your. Now, under your options, if you are trying to send someone your quantities, you need to turn on the summary. If you are just intending to send them the drawing, then you just need the diagram. So what options down here do we then need? Well, we definitely need the floor plan. That's the 2D. And then I highly recommend the room detail view, and I will show you what that looks like in just 1 second, and the 3D view. And then if I click OK, this system is going to open that. I can do the whole page. Notice I chose an E1. It's a little bit bigger than that. So we're probably in a D. So let's change it to a D. Nope. So we need to turn off the margin and we are on a D. Fantastic. So we have our floor plan with the beautiful legend that outlines what all of this stuff is. Then we have our room detail view, which is our, let me go back to the settings. We have our legend only for our wall detail legend. We have it full width, 100%, 50% height, and we have room detail wall checked. So what does this give you? It gives you, assuming you are labeling your rooms, it will give you your room name, a small legend of all of the finishes that occur within the space, a floor plan with the walls labeled, and then the walls exploded with the wall heights, assuming you're using a wall stack, also labeled. So you can effectively hand this off to your tile installer and say, go, right? And then last but not least, you provide a 3D so that way your installer can sort of use this for wayfinding to find out where that tile is going to go within the space. Make sense? Any other questions? For me personally, I like my first touch to also be shop drawing quality because I only want to have to touch it once unless there's changes being made. Does that make sense? So I try to make sure everything is as clear as it possibly can be on my first go round. Awesome. Any other questions, folks? Awesome. So I am going to go ahead and launch the very last poll of the session. It says, having seen the webinar, how do you feel about using the program? Options are, I'm so in, sign me up. Looks cool, I'll probably give it a try. Meh, still on the fence. Not really my thing. And nah, I'll pass. So hope this helped to sort of give you guys a better view or understanding of how the program thinks, as well as different methodologies to get through some of those hurdles. And as always, should you need us, our support team is available to you from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time, Monday through Friday. And feel free to email us at support@measuresquare.com. We also have a chat bot on our website. That's measuresquare.com. Feel free to use that 24 hours a day, and it can answer most of the typical support questions.